So during some renovations at the Workers' Hearts and Heritage Center, which is inside the Custom House, that's the museum I was talking about. So they were doing some renovations, and I'm trying to see if this was renovations for the museum. I think it was. So this is after the karate dojo and before the museum. They come in and they're working on it. So there is a painter named Jim. He considers himself a psychic, and he's sensitive. Let's say sensitive, that he could pick up on things. And people who are more sensitive, whether you are psychic and do readings or not, you understand this. So if you go into a room that has an energy in it, you feel it. If the energy in a room changes because of how people feel around you, you feel that as well. And the worst part of that sensitivity is empathy on a psychic level, which can be very draining. So I don't think Jim was on that level, but he was attached to that sensitivity so much so that he was able to receive messages through his dreams. So he did have a dream one night. So during the renovations, this mantelpiece, you know what, this might have been from the karate dojo, because I think the mantelpiece was down there still. So the mantelpiece used to be in what we call the dark room. This is a large, beautiful piece of art that was over top of a fireplace. And it was inside the dark room, which is at the end of the hall on the first floor. So when they were doing the renovations to make it more modern looking, they needed to remove the mantelpiece. Well, needed is a strong word. They shouldn't have, to be honest. I think it would have been more beautiful in its original spot, but that's just me. They were going to move the mantelpiece. So Jim is tasked with doing this. And he has a dream the night before it's to be done. And a woman with dark hair tells him, if you move my mirror, there will be a flood. So he wakes up from the dream very disturbed, I don't know, sweating. It's stuff you see in horror movies. So he comes in the next day and tells, no, it was the museum, because he tells the curator about the dream. And she promised to present it to the board and actually say, okay, this painter had a dream. We shouldn't move the mantelpiece because the dark lady's going to get us. Of course she didn't do it. I think she was just telling Jim to kind of calm his nerves. But still, in the end, he was told to move it. So he's up, like, just picture being poor Jim up there on the ladder, having to take down this massive thing with just a little bit of help, and just like thinking, okay, the ladder's going to get knocked down. I'm going to break my neck. Well, thankfully for Jim, nothing happened. He was fine. So they got the mantelpiece down. They moved it up into the attic. It is still up there to this very day. And then they leave for the night. So the next morning, Jim is one of the first people to step through the door. As he's unlocking the front door and opens it up, steps down. What does he step in but a bunch of water? So what had happened in the middle of the night is a water pipe burst in the basement, filled up the basement, and then leaked onto the first floor. So you think, when you hear a dream talking about floods, you're thinking it's like Noah's Ark type flood. But no, it wasn't. It was just a pipe burst. Timing, very strange, whether you consider it a coincidence or not, but he did receive that warning. He did mention the flood before the pipe had burst, so you take it as you would. So that's believed to be the Dark Lady because they moved her mantle. She loved that mantle. She saying her ghost appeared in the mirror part of it on many occasions. Now, for me personally, I had an interesting experience. Now, I don't know if I can attribute this to the Dark Lady, but it was a woman's voice. So this was before one of the tours. Now, back in the day, I'd show up for the tour to set up, and there was a couple times that they had forgotten we were coming. The previous administration has nothing to do with the wonderful folks that are in there today. But I'd have to go get the employee, bring him back. He'd open the door. We'd get going with the tour. Happened only a couple times. And on the third time, I was walking up to the building, and I started knocking, and nobody answered. So I thought, I had twice bitten, third time shy. I was listening to see if there was anybody inside, and I could actually hear voices. I heard, it sounded like two women talking to each other. It could have just been one woman talking, but it was in the distance. It was muffled. I couldn't really make out the voices. And then my first thought, and if you've had a ghostly experience, I'm sure you've felt this, is your mind will kind of go through that rational side of things. and you'll think all the rational stuff. My first thought was, okay, the employees know from previous experience that they didn't show up. We had some issues, that they're probably just playing a practical joke. And, I'm good. I love these. I can take a joke. But I knew people were coming. It was going to be a busy night, so I was a little bit tense. So I start banging on the door, and I'm like, come on, guys, this isn't funny. Let us in. And as I'm doing this, I can see out of the corner of my eye, somebody walks around the corner and is walking towards the building. And I look over, and it was the employee. And he's looking at me like I'm a psychopath. And he walks up and unlocks the door, goes inside, and turns off the alarm system, which, by the way, includes motion sensors. So if there were anybody in the building, they would have set off the alarms. So that's the first thing that hits me. Second thing that hits me is like, okay, I need to figure this out. Hopefully it's something true. Something ghostly, and that I can't find any reason for its cause. So I looked around for everything. I looked for there's a TV in there. Could it have been playing something? No, the TV was off and unplugged. There was like radios and stuff. I looked for anything that would cause the sound of the woman or women talking, and there was nothing. So in my mind, it was an experience. The fact that it was a woman's voice tells me that it could have something to do with the Dark Lady, if not her herself. I thought it was two women talking. Could have been something else. I don't know. After these experiences, you never know. Now, how many of you remember a show called Creepy Canada? I know a lot of you are jumping up and down right now. I love that show too. Back in the day, before the amazing special effects that you see in the shows today, it was great at telling stories. I'll say that. I might go into detail in a future episode about my experience with Creepy Canada, which wasn't all good, but mostly good. I got my real 15 minutes of fame back then. My episode, I appeared on the Hermitage Ruins episode telling my experience with the shadows. So they filmed that, so I got my fame out of that. But the Creepy Canada episode, they actually focused in on the custom house. And I was there for that one. I wasn't there for a lot of them because I was working full-time at the time, and I couldn't stay up as late as they wanted doing the investigations because I had work the next morning. But for this one, I wasn't going to miss it because I'm personally a huge fan of the custom house. So one of our psychics, Kate Kingston, she was up in the attic. Sorry, Scratch Kingston, that has since changed. So Kate was up in the attic, and she was doing a pendulum session for the cameras. So let me set the scene. Mantelpiece, dark attic. In front is a pendulum board, which just has like a yes and no on it, and a pendulum, which, if you don't know, is a gemstone hanging on a chain so that it can rock back and forth to give you yes and no answers. So up in the attic, and then there's a couple of cameraman, the producer, Bill, and some of the team members, including myself. So Kate was in front of the mantelpiece, had some candles out to make it look cool, and you can see her and the pendulum board reflected in the mirror. So her goal was to contact the Dark Lady, and you can understand. I mean, there's a lot of pressure in these situations with these TV shows, and this is why I'm not a huge believer in things happening for the camera. So there's a lot of pressure when the cameras are on that to make stuff happen, because the producers aren't investigators in most cases. They're just trying to figure out what people are going to watch so the show doesn't get canceled. So Kate's trying to do the session and nothing's happening. It's very boring. So finally she's like, okay, let's take a break. And they shut the cameras off. And this is where she did something. Now, this is kind of like the nuclear option when it comes to ghost investigation. I mean, if you want to make stuff happen, it's a good, effective method, but I wouldn't recommend it if you want to keep things controlled, especially in a truly haunted place like the custom house. So she did something known as goading the spirit. And that's where you disrespect the spirit in so many words. You're trying to disrespect the spirit so that it does something to prove its existence. So what did Kate do? She takes out I believe it was a $20 bill from her pocket, and she throws it on the ground and says, "Dark Lady, if you're real, take the money." So it's not the hugest disrespect in the world, but it is, not a nice thing to do. So she did it, but she had a reason for doing it. And I completely understood. So the cameras come back on, and Kate's continuing with the session. It's like, Dark Lady, if you're here, let us know through the pendulum. And the pendulum still doesn't move. But what else is happening? We have no idea. But at the top of the mantle, right above Kate's head, is what's known as a sconce. Now, the sconce is a beautiful carved wooden piece that is sitting in a 1-inch peg so that it doesn't come out or fall. But we didn't realize this, but it was slowly moving off the peg by itself. And how do we know this? Is because it fell. So we're all looking at Kate. Like, this is interesting. We're looking down at the pendulum because that's the focal point. And then Kate yelps as this sconce, this heavy wooden sconce, hit the back of her head. It was just amazing. I'm sorry, Kate, but it was amazing because the thing hit the back of her head. I looked up to see if the peg had come loose or broke or something. No, it was sitting right there. This 1-inch peg was still intact. So the only thing is if something had lifted it off and dropped the thing directly on Kate's head. So the Dark Lady had given her answer. So you mix the fact that the goading the spirit was focused in on the Dark Lady, and that the response was quite aggressive, then you could say that was one of those experiences. So again, we have Jim the Painter having a dream about a woman with dark hair, me hearing the voice or voices from the other side, but it was a female voice. And then, of course, at the end, Kate goading the spirit, she focused that energy on the Dark Lady, and the Dark Lady responds. So in the end, I have to say personally that I am a huge believer in this, and that I think whether the Dark Lady existed from the 1800s or not, that she does exist now. And my hope is that one day we can redo those tours. Maybe not the hunts ever again. I can understand that. But at least do the tours in there so that we can get back in the building and experience more with that. I wonder if the ghosts do miss us. I definitely miss that.